So the same argument applies to racial and ethnic representation. They know what that community is potentially going through or have more insight, not just during a pandemic, but every day.
A lawsuit recently filed against Yakima County dealing with how the county conducts its elections. And there's a little bit of deja vu in there. We'll get to that. So tell us, though, what is this lawsuit against Yakima County all about?
So this lawsuit was just filed on July 13th by 4 residents. We've known about this since January when One America, an immigrant advocacy organization based in Seattle, warned Yakima County that its electoral system was unfairly diluting Latino votes. The reason they argue this is because to get elected in Yakima County, candidates have to go through a primary in their district, and then the top 2 candidates from each district face off in county-wide elections. Yakima County has a slight white majority county-wide. That means in Latino majority districts, the candidates that those communities back might not make it in the general election. Plaintiffs also say they're suing because Yakima County hasn't taken any action since being warned about this issue in January, but County Prosecutor Joseph Brusick says that that's not true, that the county has been looking into these claims, but that's been delayed by their work responding to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The city of Yakima, not the county, city of Yakima went through a very similar thing, a lawsuit, federal court case 8 years ago, and it was resolved a few years later. Remind us what happened with the city of Yakima and the claims against it.
Almost the same thing happened. Honestly, the plaintiffs made pretty similar arguments that voters in the city of Yakima voted along racial lines and that the slight white majority in citywide elections in November suppressed candidates that were backed in Latino districts in the August primary. And actually, in the end, federal courts sided with plaintiffs and they forced the city to redraw its districts and just do everything by district. And that's actually where these 2 cases might vary, because in this 2020 case, they're proposing that the electoral system be replaced with the ranked choice voting system, which would get rid of primaries entirely and instead replace that with the ability for voters to rank their candidates and then redistribute votes from losing candidates to other candidates.
To summarize some of the reaction, frankly, that we've seen on this story from the previous time when it involved the city, and again now with the county, it sort of goes like this. Well, why does it matter the race or the ethnicity of a particular candidate or member of the county commission or city council, as long as they do a good job and they're there to represent all people equally? And so on the other side of that, I wonder what the advocacy groups and the voters themselves who are Latinx, what they say to that. Like, why do they say it's important to have Latinx candidates represented on this county commission and the city council?
The argument for racial representation in the city council and the county commission goes beyond just having a certain ethnicity at the table. It's more about what that person brings in terms of their lived experiences. And sometimes that depends a lot on someone's race or their ethnic background. And, even outside of race and ethnicity, that lived experience is something that's seen as valuable when we talk about officials who have experience, for example, in the business community. And here in Yakima County, a good example of that is Commissioner Vicki Baker, who has been very vocal for the small business interests during the pandemic. Maybe that's because she owns a grocery store and knows what small businesses are experiencing. So the same argument applies to racial and ethnic representation, is that someone who comes from those communities and has lived as someone Latino, they know what that community is potentially going through or have more insight, not just during a pandemic, but every day.
Finally, on the other front that Yakima is known for recently, on the coronavirus front, lest we forget that is a major issue in that part of the state and, of course, all over the region. But Yakima County, of course, has been one of the hardest hit in Washington and on a per capita case basis across the whole country, frankly. So some mask mandate, of course, went into effect in Yakima County. Governor Inslee imposed that and then eventually extended that statewide shortly thereafter. just from your view on the ground, how are things been going on that front in Yakima County?
Personally, I've seen a lot more people wearing masks. And now the health district is saying that 95% of people are wearing masks. And that's a huge amount of progress from back in May when it was just about a third of people. After that, the health district issued their mandate and that went up to 60. And then now it seems that the governor's order making wearing a mask mandatory to go into businesses, that has really shot it up to 95. There's preliminary evidence that it is working to bend down that curve in our case rate growth.
Indeed. Well, thank you for sharing that information. We'll be sure to check in as we go along in this pandemic. Enrique, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You can see more on these and other stories and more coronavirus updates and resources at our website, nwpb.org. Thank you for joining us here in the unique Northwest.